right. Wow, we've got just a great mix of people here. Got folks from 350, somebody from New York, Seattle, San Diego, Ventura, Oakland. This is awesome. All right, great. I think we are going to get started now. It is 2:03 and we've got about 115 people with us right now, so very exciting. So before we jump into it, just some quick best practices for Zoom calls. So if we want to hit next slide. So to ensure good audio quality and minimize background noise, we have folks muted. So if you can stay muted throughout this, that would be great. You can choose gallery view if you want to see everybody on the call, or speaker view if you want to prioritize the presentation. You can use the chat box to ask questions. There's going to be a pretty long Q&A session at the end. So we're going to have everybody type their questions there. You can either put in your questions during the presentation or save them for the end. We're going to try and get through as many of them as we can. If we're Zoom bombed, so if somebody tries to interrupt this call, we're going to try and remove them. And if that's unsuccessful, we're just going to shut down the call for a couple of minutes, wait for 2 minutes, and then everybody will log in again. If you find that you are accidentally dropped from the call, just go ahead and wait a minute to see if Zoom pulls you back in. And then if not, just go ahead and log in again, and the moderator will readmit you. This webinar is being recorded, so we're going to share this after the fact so that more people can get this content. But it also means that your screens will be recorded. So if you don't want your face to be shown, just go ahead and either turn off your camera or unblock your camera. And then finally, we will be posting this webinar on Facebook Live. So if that is something of interest to you, that's another option. So let's go ahead with the next slide. Great. So welcome to the first virtual Building Electrification 101 training. My name is Matt Goff. I'm one of the presenters. And I'm sure most folks on the call are familiar with the Sierra Club, but for folks who are not, the Sierra Club is the oldest and largest grassroots environmental organization in the country. We have over 3 million members and supporters and 125-plus-year history. We work towards solving the climate crisis, preserving our natural spaces, and getting folks out into nature. And today we are joined by a fantastic group, Mothers Out Front, to co-present this information. And I'll pass it over to Linda to talk a little bit more about Mothers Out Front.
So hi, everybody. Our organization is a national movement that's grassroots based of mothers and others. And we work together to build our power to ensure a healthy environment today and a livable climate tomorrow for all children. We're much younger than the Sierra Club, but in the last 7 years, we built a movement of over 35,000 supporters nationally. And we have 5,600 supporters in California in 5 different regions. Most recently, we've been recognized by the United Nations with a really special award at the Madrid Cup. That was exciting. And the reason I was invited on today is that the San Jose team in the South Bay was really involved in the efforts to get local gas bans and reach codes passed in San Jose, Morgan Hill, Campbell, Cupertino, Los Gatos, and others. And so I'll be sharing later today a little case study of how we were able to do that in San Jose. All right, I'll pass it on.
Great. So here's just a little bit more information about us. So again, my name is Matt. I'm a senior campaign representative at the Sierra Club, and I work specifically on building electrification in California, working with cities and communities across the state to advance these policies. Outside of work, I'm a really big biker, so both mountain biking and road biking, kind of love it all. I'm a bad surfer, but I also enjoy being in the ocean, and I'm a big old improv comedy nerd. And my pronouns are he, him, and his.
Hi, everyone. My name is Melissa Yu, and I am a community organizer at the local chapter of the Sierra Club. So I specifically work within the San Francisco Bay region on our renewable energy campaigns. And I love hiking, not so much recently because we can't be outdoors, but I have recently got a new puppy, and I have been loving taking her to new parks. That's all we can do for now. And my pronouns are she, her, and hers.
And hi again, I'm Linda Hutchins-Knowles, also pronouns she, her, and hers. My role is the California Senior Organizer with Mothers Out Front. In that role, I coach our 2 community teams in San Jose and San Francisco, and I also provide trainings throughout California. I also love biking and hiking, and I have 2 amazing daughters and 2 adorable cats.
I'm on mute. Okay, so just to go through some of what we'll cover today, the first on the agenda is we're going to cover the role of building electrification and how it's playing a part in the climate movement. Then we'll go on to discussing the impacts of gas use in buildings and how it is accelerating climate change. Following that, we're going to talk about the connection between the current pandemic and how it's connected with building electrification. Afterwards, we'll do a bit of a primer since this is a building electrification 101. We'll go through some terms. After that, we are going to talk about how equity and justice has to be at the center of our building electrification campaign, and the policy landscape, what needs to change, how are we going to make those changes, what has already been done, and sharing resources. And then we're going to talk about the opportunities for activists to drive transition to gas-free buildings. And finally, we'll end with the Q&A.
So we wanted to begin with situating this approach in the whole greater climate movement. And as you all know, there are many approaches to the climate crisis, and they're all important. So here on this chart on the left-hand side, one of the approaches is to work on reducing the supply of fossil fuels. So this is the Leave It in the Ground movement, stopping pipelines and compressor stations, banning fracking, and posing setback limits. On the other spectrum of reducing or working on the energy area, we have boosting demand for clean energy. So trying to move all of our society to 100% renewable energy. And in California, we've really led the way with a very strong renewable portfolio standard, the SB 100 that many of you worked on, passing community choice energy, and some of us are working on putting a price on carbon. And not included on this picture yet in the future, other approaches like regenerative agriculture to draw down more carbon is also super important. But building electrification kind of fits in the middle here because in our attempt to electrify everything, we can use kind of a carrot or a stick. So we can ban gas, which is really important, and actually prohibit it being used in new buildings. And we can also incentivize using renewable energy, electricity, and getting off gas through REACH codes and retrofits. And we'll be digging into those 3 approaches later today in this talk. So I'll pass it on.
Awesome. Thanks. So I want to just sort of dig in a little bit more about gas in buildings and how it is exacerbating the climate crisis. So we can see on this pie chart that gas in buildings is responsible for 1/3 of the US's gas consumption and over 10% of our country's greenhouse gas emissions. So when we're thinking about solving the climate crisis, gas in buildings can't be a part of that solution because of how much is currently emitting. The bad news here is that there are still a lot of gas hookups happening. Gas companies connect at least 1 new house to gas every single minute of the day, which means that we're seeing over 500,000 new gas connections every single year. There is some good news though. Next slide. So if we look at this slide, we can see that California plays an incredibly important role in going gas-free. So there are 10 states that play an outsized role in greenhouse gas emissions from buildings. California has the 2nd largest emission after New York. In fact, California's buildings represent 8% of US greenhouse gas emissions from buildings. Now, the good news is that California is making significant progress towards building electrification. And as we electrify California, we can transform the national market for advanced electric appliances like heat pumps. We can normalize electrification as a concept, and we can inspire other states to follow suit. California is home to 1 in 8 people in this country and is the 5th largest economy in the entire world. And so the policies and practices that we adopt here have a major ripple effect in other states and other countries, and the leadership role that we can play can't be understated. So next slide. So this slide just further illustrates greenhouse gas emissions from our state specifically. So buildings account for roughly 17% of California's greenhouse gas emissions when we account for the methane leakage that happens along the gas transmission pipeline. So our state has some really ambitious climate goals. Senate Bill 100 has us getting to 100% clean energy by 2045. And in order to hit that goal, we must electrify all of our buildings. So this is just a good way to sort of ground folks in sort of the necessary policy to get towards an all-electric future. Next slide.
So we wanted to situate this in the context in which we're living right now and acknowledge that we are in the midst of a pandemic. And so as we advocate for 100% electric buildings, we want to keep some guiding principles in mind. So first, we need to center people's needs and make sure everything we're doing is supporting people. We need to also focus on resilience and flexibility. And finally, we want to keep in mind the need to stand in solidarity for public health in this moment. We also want to point out that there's an unintended side effect that most people may not be aware of with the sheltering in place. Although it is essential for our health right now, it also has, unfortunately, for those who do cook with gas stoves, it's being locked or being cooped up inside and cooking on gas stoves is not ideal for one's health because gas stoves release nitrogen dioxide, fine particulate matter, and carbon monoxide. And so if you could advance to the next. We want to make sure people are aware that the air in kitchens with gas stoves is often more polluted than outdoor air. So it is good to get outside and to ventilate as much as possible when you're cooking with gas. A recent study out of Harvard found that a small increase in fine particulate matter can lead to a 15% increased death rate from COVID-19. And so those who are exposed to outdoor and indoor air pollution are unfortunately at greater risk for serious complications for COVID. And so I just want to situate this in the knowledge that not everybody has the resources to go out there and replace their gas stove with an induction or electric stove. But we need to be working on policies that will make that affordable through rebates and that sort of thing to make sure people can have healthy appliances in their homes during this pandemic.
Awesome. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about gas-free all-electric buildings. Like, what is the technology behind this? So on this slide, we can see that this pie chart shows the different appliances that we use in our homes and the greenhouse gas emissions that they are responsible for. So we can see that space and water heating are responsible for the bulk of climate change causing greenhouse gas emissions when we burn gas using them in our homes. And even though stoves are a smaller percentage of greenhouse gases, only 7%, they still release harmful chemicals into our homes that can have really negative health impacts for people. And so they need to be a part of this conversation as well. The solution is all electric appliances. So appliances like heat pump, space heaters and water heaters, and induction stoves can eliminate these sources of greenhouse gas emissions entirely and indoor air pollution. So we're going to get into a little bit of how those things work in the next slide. So what the heck is a heat pump and induction cooking? So that was sort of my first thought when I heard the term heat pump. But I would be willing to bet that the vast majority of people on this call already have a heat pump inside of their home. Your refrigerator is actually a heat pump. Heat pumps are pretty cool. Without getting too far into the technology, instead of generating heat by burning gas, heat pumps simply move heat from one location to another. So if your house is too hot, a heat pump will move the warm air inside of your home outside. And if your home is too cold, it'll move warm air from outside into your home. One of the big benefits of a heat pump is that you actually get heating and cooling ability in the same appliance. And they're ultra efficient. So heat pumps are 3 to 5 times more efficient than their gas counterparts, which means that you can save money on your operating and utility bills. Linda's going to talk a little bit more about induction stoves.
Yeah, we wanted to bring this up because frankly, most people don't know maybe or care much about how their home is heated or how it's cooled and how their water is heated. They might not pay attention to that or get upset about any policies that incentivize electric. But we do find that people care about how they cook. They want to have choice about the kind of stove they use. And the narrative for a while has been that gas stoves are more desirable than traditional electric stoves. But the truth is that new technology of induction stoves are way better than both gas and traditional electric stoves. They are truly the latest and greatest. Induction stoves use coils that generate magnetic fields that produce a warming reaction in steel or iron-based pots and pans. So they don't actually involve a flame or a heating element. They use magnets to generate that heat. So a little case study, my own family replaced our stove with an induction stove for several reasons. Most of all, we cared about the climate, so that was an important choice for us. And the fact that we're conserving up to 90% of the energy that was wasted before, and that actually reduces our utility bills. Also, they're super efficient and fast. There's a power boost that can heat a pot of water really in minutes, very few minutes. And also for us as parents, the safety factor was very important. We feel comfortable letting our kids cook on them because there's no flames. As soon as the pot's removed, the burner, it's not even a burner, the surface cools down. All right, and then finally, I'll just add, if you want to advance one more, that even restaurants are adopting induction stoves, even gourmet restaurants like the French Laundry. So this really is the latest and greatest. Induction is much better than gas or traditional electric stoves. With that, I'll pass it back.
Thanks, Linda. So now I'm going to talk about the hazards of gas and the benefits of electrification. So as Matt and Linda have already touched on, gas burning buildings increase greenhouse gas emissions, which intensifies climate change. And there are a number of other reasons why we want to get gas out of our homes, and the first being public health. So there is actually a study produced by the Lawrence Berkeley Lab that shows that indoor air quality when gas stoves are on are so high that it would actually be considered illegal if it was measured outdoors. And on top of that, gas stoves actually increase childhood asthma rates by 42%. The second reason is safety, and as we have all seen in near our homes, natural disasters have increasingly intensified due to climate change, and it's really obviously getting worse every year. And our infrastructure is getting older and becoming much more vulnerable than what electric infrastructure can offer. And on the flip side, there are so many benefits to electrification, and here are just a few. Electric appliances actually allow us to bring more renewable energy into our homes, and it allows us to have a much more flexible load management when we utilize technology that like heat pumps and induction stoves, like what Matt and Linda were talking about. And another benefit is that jobs will be positively impacted. There is a study that was done recently by UCLA that found in a high building electrification scenario on a 20-year time span, we can actually add 100,000 jobs to the energy sector. And these are all high road family sustaining jobs. The next reason being that electrification can lower our energy bills. It's actually found that for new construction, you can save about $5,000 on a single family home when you're building all electric, and $2,000 per unit in a multi-family home. That's a lot of savings. And for existing buildings, switching to electric appliances can also save you money on your monthly utility bills. The last reason being that electrification allows us to erode the power of the gas industry. And why we say this is because in the US, about a third of the gas industry sales actually go to buildings, but only 85%, but 85% of those profits actually come from the sale of gas in buildings. And this is because of the high markup on gas prices. So as we are incrementally electrifying our buildings, we are going to be taking a bigger chunk of these companies' profits and therefore taking away their political power. And that's a really important piece of how we plan and hope to scale up our campaigns. So right now we're going to take a short poll to see what everyone thinks is most important to them, and you can choose the one that resonates with you the most. Okay, we have about 120 people out of 160 people who filled out the poll. Maybe just like 2-3 more seconds. Still going up. Okay. Awesome. So it looks like the highest reason is climate change. The second one is clean energy. Then it comes health, and then it comes safety. Well, actually, health, safety, lower bills, and eroding the gas industry are on very similar playing fields. So thank you, everyone. And now I'm going to pass it on to Matt.
Awesome. Great. So I think another really important consideration for building electrification exists in equity and justice, and ensuring that we center that in building electrification. So we need to ensure that electrification is being prioritized in low-income housing. It would be an untenable failure if building electrification is limited to wealthy pockets of society. In this work, we must focus on the health impacts, on community resilience, on improved housing, and lowering energy bills, especially for low-income housing. There are some ways to do this. One of those is partnering with affordable housing groups and community equity partners to advocate for things like coordinated repair, building renovation, efficiency upgrades, and electrification investments. And as we're doing this work, there are things to watch out for and ensure happen and don't happen. One of the key things that we need to prevent from happening is displacement and increased rents because of electrification. Building electrification won't serve folks if they are being pushed out of their homes because of increased rent prices connected to renovations that happened on the property. And so when we're designing policy, we need to ensure that folks can reap these benefits without being forced out of their living spaces. We also need to make sure that the cost of stranded gas assets is not falling on those who can least afford it. So as we electrify California and as the gas infrastructure system gets smaller, that cost is going to be concentrated on a smaller number of users. And so we need to make sure that low-income communities especially are not left bearing the brunt of that cost. We need to make sure that building electrification for low-income communities and EJ communities does not miss capital investment cycles, and so that money is being distributed equitably across the state and across the country. And we can't lock communities into dangerous gas for decades. We must avoid energy stratification. So on the left here, this is the cover of a report done by our friends over at Greenlining. They have outlined what equitable electrification looks like. After this call, we'll be sharing a bunch of resources with folks. And this is one of the reports that I wanted to highlight as something that folks should check out. I'm going to pass it back to Melissa now.
Thanks, Matt. So right now, I am going to really quickly go through electric buildings that are already in existence. So this is not far-fetched. It's happening currently. And so here we see a office renovation in Mountain View. Here we see UC Santa Cruz student housing. They utilized heat pump water heaters. Here we see a retrofitted home in Sunnyvale. Here we see a lab in San Diego, and if a lab in San Diego can do it, it's possible because for so many other like homes and buildings, because labs are just so complex and have so many different needs, and the fact that they're able to go all electric should give us hope. The next one here is affordable housing. The next one here is a science museum in San Francisco. And the final one is all electric restaurants. And these are examples in the Bradley Terminal at LAX. A lot of concern we hear around going all electric is from whether restaurants can do it. And we see here that it is possible. And there are so many different examples of this.
Awesome. Thanks, Melissa. Schools are another really important place to electrify our buildings. School districts really are key players in efforts to electrify existing and new buildings. The Sierra Club's Climate Parents program is running a campaign to electrify school buildings across the country that is aligned with our broader building electrification goals. Schools are huge energy consumers and are often the largest consumer in local municipalities. This offers a really great chance to convert fossil fuel heating and cooking in school systems to air source heat pumps and all electric cookings. And this is really an eye towards the future. Schools are where America's young people spend most of their waking hours Monday through Friday. And if we can create healthy fossil-free buildings, that's what they'll grow up knowing and grow up expecting. From an equity perspective, half of the nation's public school kids are on free and reduced lunches, and the majority are youth of color. So we are reaching a very important demographic from an equity perspective. And these kids are also going to experience the health benefits of cleaner air buildings, which we know are tied to higher academic performance. Climate Parents and their partners are running 20 campaigns across the country and in California here in Los Angeles. In fact, in December, there's a huge win in LA. The second largest school district in the US passed a 100% clean energy school districts resolution that gets the entire LA school district off of gas heating, cooking, and transportation by 2040. There's going to be more information to get in contact with Climate Parents. Lisa Hoyos, their director, does a lot of amazing work, and you can talk more with her about that. Next slide. So the policy landscape in California, so this is just to paint sort of in broad brushes where we are today. Unfortunately, 90% of California's buildings use gas right now. We are actually one of the states with the highest gas usage across the country. And this is because we have had policies that have favored gas heating for decades. The good news here is that the tide is slowly changing for the better. So recently, in the last couple of years, we have seen new rebates to lower the cost of electrification. We have seen electrification pilots all across the state to better understand how we can electrify in cost-effective and equitable ways. We've seen changes to state building codes to allow for all electric new construction. And we're seeing utilities create electrification-friendly rates to steer people and businesses towards those appliances. Next slide. So there are a number of policy opportunities to phase out gas in California's buildings. So just to put a finer point on this, we need to make electrification more affordable. So that is new rebates for consumers, inclusive financing so that everybody has access to this technology, and rate reform. We need to stop expanding the gas system. So changes to city and state building codes for new construction and retrofits are a really great way to get at this policy level. We need to ensure that there are tenant protections. So as was mentioned earlier, no displacement for folks because of electrification. We need rent protections, and we need to prioritize low-income renters. And we need a plan for a managed and just transition off of gas. So we need to make sure that the workers in the gas industry now aren't just put out to dry. And we need to ensure that there is a transition program so that those folks can get trained up in the clean energy economy or to retire with dignity, depending on where they are in their community. And we need to ensure that, again, all Californians and really folks across the country are able to transition at the same time. Next slide. So to zoom in, so we've talked a little bit about sort of the state level policy, and now we want to talk about city leadership. So cities, I think, play an integral role in this fight. In the last 12 months, we have seen 28 cities and 2 counties, so 30 communities in California pass some sort of building electrification ordinance, which is incredibly exciting. In fact, one of our analysts recently did a study, and in California, now almost 10% of the population lives in an area with a building electrification ordinance. That's massive in the span of just 12 months. City leadership is important because it sets high benchmarks for other cities and other states to follow, and it can serve as a roadmap for regulatory agencies and for the state legislature when they're thinking about electrification policy that can benefit all of California or other states. City leadership also plays an important role in the shaping of California's building codes, which are updated every 3 years. Next slide.
Okay, so city leadership. So let's talk about what your city can do. There are actually a number of policy vehicles that cities can adopt to electrify, and I'll talk briefly about what those options are. So first we have here REACH codes, which there are two different kinds. There is an all-electric REACH code and then an electric preferred REACH code. So electric preferred basically means that you can still build with gas, but you have a higher energy efficiency standard that you have to meet with these gas appliances. And this is really aiming to disincentivize gas use because it costs more. The second option is a gas ban ordinance. And the first city to actually do this was the city of Berkeley. And what they did was they used their city's police powers to ban gas hookups in new construction because it is a threat to our health and our safety. And so you're not allowed to build with gas there anymore. The third is in climate action plans. These plans are updated every year, and either every year, every couple of years. And this is a really great opportunity for you all to add in electrification language. The fourth being emission standards for large existing buildings. Basically, cities can require buildings to reduce its annual greenhouse gas emissions every year, and those emission numbers have to incrementally get smaller, and eventually the economics of this flip, and it really just makes more sense to electrify than to put in gas infrastructure. Finally, like Matt mentioned, cities can push for state action, and you can do this by making a statement locally, by passing really aggressive policies here in whatever local city you are from. And by doing that, you really shift the conversation at the state level. So now I'm going to pass it on to Linda to showcase a mini case study.
All right. So yeah, we wanted to show how this was done in one particular city in San Jose, and how Mothers Out Front, our small team of mothers and others in this area, were able to contribute to this campaign. So basically, last summer, San Jose drafted a REACH code that was really weak, didn't have very strong incentives and had no bans. And so a great group of organizations called the Campaign for Fossil-Free Buildings have been working on this, and they invited Mothers Out Front to join to bring our people power. And to get going, a lot of our members had no idea what a REACH code was, and they didn't understand how important it is to get our buildings off gas. And so we hosted a webinar. In fact, Rachel Golden of the Sierra Club, who's going to help us answer questions today, co-led that with Diane Bailey of Menlo Spark. So it was a great webinar that helped to focus on why we need to reach for fossil-free buildings for our climate and our kids. And you can see on the graph here, there are 4 areas we emphasize the importance, besides for the climate, also saving money, improving health, advancing equity, and creating a safer, healthier future. So that was step 1, to get informed and join this coalition. And step 2 was we started to lobby our city council members, the staff, and the mayor. We sent an official letter urging the proposed REACH code to be strengthened. And we had meetings with some of the key people involved, including the mayor's senior policy advisor. And we also generated letters, responses to the memo that had been proposed. And of the 22 letters from the public, 17 came from mothers and others in our group. And what we were able to do through these meetings was that the mayor and several city council members, 4 of them, came out with a proposal to strengthen the REACH code dramatically. And so step 3, the next step was we wanted to generate public support for this new proposal, which was the most ambitious of any large city in the country. So we published letters to the editor, and we waged a Twitter storm. we had a member speak at the press conference. The mayor invited her to speak on behalf of the community. And she afterwards and others did interviews with the TV to generate positive coverage for this. So all this pressure from the public was really helpful to give the elected officials like the cover they needed to be able to take this aggressive action. And so number 4, the day of the vote, we also wanted to show a lot of public support. So we turned out mothers and others to give public testimony, and a lot of them made their own posters that were just really heartfelt and very sweet. And they got up there, and I want to emphasize that a lot of people that were participating were not like trained activists. Some of them were giving public comments for the first time in their life. We just coached them how to bring their story of why they cared, and they did a great job. One of them even got a standing ovation, not standing, but lots of claps at the end, which is not typical of these meetings. And then the next step, actually right after the vote, we decided we needed to celebrate and capture this moment. We took a picture. Some of the folks on the call today are in that photo. And we went out afterwards to celebrate those who could for dinner and just to have that sense of, wow, we did this. To emphasize what was accomplished, San Jose's reach code and gas ban, they did both. It's the most ambitious of any large city in the country. And the gas ban applies to any new construction under 3 stories or under. And the reach code is for all the rest and incentivizes all electric construction. And finally, the last step, number 6 on the next slide, we thought it was really important to thank everybody involved publicly. So we sent letters to the editor to applaud San Jose's leadership and tweeted to thank our allies and the city council members for taking that action. One of our members who's an artist drew that picture for the mayor and sent a thank you note. So we have people send emails to thank them. So that's the mini case study, and we can, at the end, there'll be time for questions. Thanks.
Awesome. So we've definitely made a lot of progress in the last year. I think San Jose is one of the best and most exciting examples. Unfortunately, the gas industry is taking notice of these victories and is taking steps to fight back. I think that this quote that is on the slide is illustrative of that. So WISPA, which stands for the Western States Petroleum Association, their president said, "Can you imagine if every local municipality takes up this issue of building electrification? It'd be death by 1,000 cuts." And because they have recognized the threat that our work has presented to them, they've started to counter-mobilize. So this looks like lobbying city council meetings and trying to spread misinformation. They are putting pieces in local newspapers to try and confuse folks. They're spending money on front groups to try and get the community to turn against building electrification. So it's worrisome, but it's also something that we can overcome. Ultimately, the social license is on our side. Building electrification costs less, is better for the environment, and is better for people's health. And those facts are undeniable. So while we know that we are going to have to fight the gas industry in order to advance these policies, we also know that the science, facts, and people are on our side. So let's go to the next slide. This is just a quick smattering of some of the groups that have worked on building electrification policy. It is by no means the final list. There are more groups that are not on this slide than are working on this issue. But I wanted to share this to show that there is a variety of folks from all across the spectrum who are working on this, from developers to health groups to environmental justice groups to green groups to builders, folks who care about affordability, climate change, and public health. Encompasses like most people in the world. And so I think the more that folks understand this issue, the more people who are going to come to our movement. And one of the hopes for our training today was to give y'all a sense of what this work is, what's happening right now, and how you can make an impact. So if we want to go to the next slide here, there are just a couple of things that folks on this call today can do to help. So afterwards, we'll be sending an email to folks. One of the things that you can do is sign a building electrification petition and amplify it on your social media platform. You can reach out to local government and ask them about their building electrification plans. You can attend virtual city council meetings and voice your support for building electrification. You can submit letters to the editor and local papers. You can bring other organizations in your community into the issue, and you can keep an eye out from us for future trainings. This year, we are planning on doing a number of virtual trainings and hopefully eventually in-person trainings to give people more of those skills. And this is the first in a series. So we want to thank you so much for joining us today. I hope that you got a lot out of this training. And we are going to move now to a poll and then open up to some Q&A. So this poll is quite quick. It's just, are you interested in getting more involved? If you are, we'll just send you an email with some more information about the various ways that you can plug in, and you can choose what makes the most sense for you, the time commitments that you have, and the skills that you might have. So just go ahead and fill that out, and then we will open up the Q&A in just a few moments. Awesome. So we're going to give it like maybe another 10 seconds, and then we are going to close the poll. Great. All right, I think we are going to close the poll there. That's awesome. 70% of the folks on this call are looking to get more involved, so that's great. We'll definitely be following up with you with more information. And the folks who are not interested or maybe who don't want to get involved at this time, that's totally fine too. There will be opportunities for you to plug in the future when you are ready to get involved in this work. So with that, we are going to open it up to some questions and answers. So our colleague, Rachel Golden, is also going to join us for this section to help answer some of these questions. And then just to reiterate how this portion of the webinar is going to go ahead and type your questions into the chat box. Throughout this presentation, we have been collecting the questions that people have been asking and have put them into a document. And so we're going to try and get through them. Rachel is going to sort of read the questions off, and then one of the four of us will answer them. So we've got about 15 minutes to do this, so we can get started. So Rachel, when you are ready, go ahead and unmute yourself and ask the first question.
Great, can you all hear me?
Yep.
Perfect. So the first question is from Cynthia. She asks, does gas heating pollute like gas stoves, gas water heaters, and clothes dryers too? So she's curious about what are the appliances that cause indoor and outdoor air pollution?
Yeah, that's a great question. I can maybe start to answer that one, and then Rachel, if there's anything you want to sort of fill in, that would be great. So gas indoor like space and water heating for a long time has been like a fairly unregulated space. And we actually don't have a great sense of the particulate matter and pollution that are coming from some of these appliances. It's something that organizations and institutes and regulatory agencies have started to look at in the last couple of years. And what we're finding is that there are actually some indoor air pollution effects from non-cooking appliances, which is a major concern, especially since folks are spending more time indoors these days. So I think that's one area of the campaign that we are looking to sort of explore further so that we can highlight and make folks aware. Is there anything you want to add on to that, Rachel?
Yeah, sure. Maybe this is a good opportunity just to lift up that we commissioned a study by UCLA on the indoor and outdoor air pollution impacts of gas appliances. And that study will be coming out in a few weeks on April 28th. She'll be sharing it with everyone who joined today. And the major findings of that is that gas stoves are the major culprit for indoor air pollution, and that gas water heaters and space heaters are the major contributor to outdoor air pollution because those appliances get directly vented outside. And so that study finds that all those gas appliances basically cause over 350 premature deaths annually, just from the outdoor air pollution, totaling at roughly $3.5 billion in added healthcare costs per year. So there's several regulatory opportunities to curb pollution from our appliances at the local air districts and at the state level at the Air Resources Board. So for folks interested in working on the health and air quality side of this campaign, lots of information and opportunities to do that.
And if I could just piggyback on to emphasize that at all points of the cycle, there is pollution caused by gas. So at the extraction site, at storage sites, the pipelines themselves leak, and then when it's actually used. So even if in the home, maybe the electric dryer, say, isn't, or the gas dryer isn't causing pollution right in the home, all along the cycle, it's been driving pollution. So it's not good in any way, shape, or form.
Perfect, thank you. And then a bunch of folks have been asking, can I get a copy of the slides? Can you turn the Q&A into an FAQs document? Can we get sources? And certainly the team can share out the slides, all of the reports and sources, and some frequently asked questions. So that will be coming after today. So another question, there's some questions here on city action. Terry asks, any ideas for moving forward with all electric reach codes? Several communities here in Northern California have passed such legislation, yet they're being sued as a result. I'm concerned these lawsuits may slow down our progress in this direction.
Yeah, that's a great question. I can take a stab at that unless one of you all feels good about it. Great. Yeah, I think it's a major concern. We saw the California Restaurant Association sue the city of Berkeley over its natural gas prohibition. And we've seen some lawsuits in Windsor and Santa Rosa. So I guess I'll caveat this with, I'm not a lawyer, but my understanding of the issue is that these lawsuits are being brought on like fairly flimsy legal grounds. The folks that we've talked to in these communities feel very confident that their city legal defense will be able to defend against these lawsuits. I think that like the broader strategy of these lawsuits, which we believe is being sort of girded by the gas industry, is to create a chilling effect for other cities that are looking at potentially adopting ordinances of their own. So even though the lawsuit is, I think, likely to fail ultimately, it still might prevent a city who is on the fence about pursuing one of these ordinances from doing it. So I think that one of the things that we need to do in order to counteract that is just continue to highlight the benefits of electrification. And when these lawsuits do ultimately fail in court, just highlighting that for cities and communities across the country so that they know that they are on firm legal ground when they move forward with these policies. I guess the other thing I'll say is that we've just seen strong support for building electrification from regulatory agencies in California. They're also optimistic about the legality of these types of building codes. And so I don't think that there is a real underpinning for these lawsuits. It's a scare tactic.
Terrific. So we're getting a lot of different questions on the climate impacts of electrification and how important is it how that electricity is produced. So do we have to have 100% clean grid? Can there be some fossil fuel power on the grid, and will there still be a GHG benefit of electrification?
Yeah, I can tackle that, or unless one of y'all want to go for it. Cool. Yeah, that's another good question. So I think that there are a couple of things to think about for this question. So one is that all electric appliances in our home, even if they are powered by like a gas power plant, are still cleaner than if that gas was burned in our homes. And that is because these appliances are ultra efficient, so they're using less energy overall, and because the gas is not being transmitted along the gas transmission lines. And we know that there's leakage at all points along this transmission line. So it's not just the gas that's being burned in your home, it's the gas that is being released for the hundreds or thousands of miles in which it's being transmitted from the facility to your residence. So electric appliances eliminate those sources of greenhouse gas emissions. One of the other factors is that California's grid right now is very green and is getting greener. And so by having all electric appliances, we are planning for the future. And as the grid gets greener, our appliances will get even more greener. And that's not the case with gas appliances because of their nature. Yeah, I guess, Rachel, anything you want to add to that?
I think that's great. I think that's perfect. But basically, there's a lot of analysis that has been done that's compared the life cycle emissions of the most efficient gas appliances versus a heat pump, whether that heat pump is being powered by a gas power plant or being powered by renewable energy. And as Matt said, due to the efficiency benefits of the heat pumps, even if that appliance is powered by a gas power plant, it's still going to reduce emissions compared to pumping gas through the pipes to power a gas appliance. So we're very certain of the climate benefits, and we've actually done this analysis too on a national level, showing that electrifying today will reduce greenhouse gas emissions over the first 10 years of the appliance's life. So we can share that information as well. It's an important question though, because we do need to make sure that we're not causing increased emissions upstream. Great, so we have a bunch of policy questions. One is there any work on requiring heat pumps for replacement in existing buildings? And sort of the balance of effort around incentives versus mandates.
Yeah, that's a good question. Rachel, do you want to tackle that one?
Sure. So primary focus of the work is making sure that electrification for both new construction and for existing buildings is affordable and accessible. So a lot of the work that the community of NGOs engaged in this are doing is on lowering the cost of electrification. So that takes shape in terms of creating incentive programs to lower the cost of buying a heat pump or an induction stove, as well as rate reform to ensure that the operating costs are lower than folks' current bills and that they're affordable, as well as policies to protect tenants from increased bills, eviction, and to ensure that landlords actually use subsidies and incentives for electrification. So I'd say in that line, a lot of the policy work is really focused on incentives and programs to get heat pumps out there rather than on mandates. In terms of the mandates, though, we are looking at mandates for all electric buildings, especially for new construction, where we can already show that it is cost effective. And as this technology gets developed and the price comes down, we're looking at carbon targets, greenhouse gas emission standards for all existing buildings as well. But it's sort of important to be pursuing both tracks of lowering costs as well as mandates at the same time. Great. Let's see, another question, there's been a few questions around, does anyone else want to add to that, or should I keep going?
No, that's great.
I guess I could actually add one little thing, is just that from a policy point of view, it seems like the most important thing first is to stop any new gas infrastructure from getting built. And so that's why we need the reach codes and the gas bans on the new construction, because as someone pointed out in the chat, those are going to last for decades. So I think in terms of like a hierarchy, like first thing to do is stop anything bad getting built. And then the next is to try to incentivize retrofits. And so I think it is very difficult to mandate that people pay money to upgrade their appliances. So that's where we need the rebates. And a lot of community choice energy agencies are incentivizing that through rebates. And that's where I think we do need to have more state incentives. So yeah, I'll just finish with that.
Great. So there's a few questions on here on resilience, right? We've all faced a lot of power outages in the last year, especially last fall due to the wildfires. And there's concern around how resilient are all electric homes? Do we need battery backup? Can we organize microgrids? What are we giving up, or are we getting a benefit by going all electric, and what happens with future power outages?
Yeah, it's another really good question. Yeah, and that definitely resonates with me. I live in the Bay Area here in Oakland, and the wildfires that we've experienced and the blackouts, I think, are front of mind when considering building electrification. I think that there's a couple of important points to note here. So one of the big, I think, misconceptions that exist is that gas still works great while the power is out. Modern gas appliances require electricity in order to start. And so if the power goes out and you've got a gas appliance that has been made in the last 10 or 15 years, it's not going to work either. So it's not like you have an additional benefit because of it. The other thing is that some electric appliances like heat pump water heaters actually are storage units as well. So you can store hot water for a period of time, 24 hours, sometimes longer, depending on the model. And so while your power may be out, you can still have access to warm water. I do agree, though, that there needs to be other policies to strengthen the grid. Microgrids are an interesting concept. local battery backups, I think, make a lot of sense. But for me, one of the big takeaways and the big misconceptions that are out there is that gas works well when the power is out. It's simply not true with the modern appliances. And I think, Rachel, maybe you had a personal experience with the heat pump water heater. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Oh yeah, so we lost power for a few days. My house actually still has a gas furnace and a gas water heater, although we have an induction stove. And it was frustrating. We couldn't have any, we had no hot water. So we went over to a neighbor's house who has all electric and solar, and we were able to shower there. So we definitely, witnessed the benefits of going all electric during a power outage here, because our gas tankless water heater would not work without electricity. I think we have time for one more question, and there's been a lot of chatting about induction and how does it work and how can I get experience with it, and some folks are asking about induction lending programs. So wondering if anyone on the call can share some information about what utilities or cities have induction lending programs so folks can give it a try.
So San Jose does, there's about 8 Cook's little 1-burner ones that people can check out, like is it from the library. So anybody in San Jose can check those out and try them out. I'm not sure about other areas.
Yeah, I think a number of cities have like induction libraries. I believe that Oakland had one going before the COVID crisis. I know that some of the communities in Southern California have induction like lending libraries. And it makes sense, like these sort of plug and play induction stoves are really cost effective. You can get like a quality one on the internet for $50 or $60. So a lot of cities that are looking at building electrification policy like have these programs so that people can use them. In terms of induction compatibility, basically any cookware that you have that is magnetic will work. So if you have like cast iron hands, you are in good shape. For some of the other materials, like if it's ceramic, for example, it might require new cookware, but I think folks would be surprised at how many cookware accessories that you have in your house now would work with an induction stove.
I've also learned recently that you can actually get attachments to like ceramic cookware. So.
Oh, cool. There you go. So your ceramic cookware can still work. All right. So we are right at 8 o'clock. I want to say thank you again to everybody for joining. I hope that you got a lot out of this training. We've recorded this webinar, and so we will send it out so that if you have colleagues or friends or family members who wanted to see but couldn't join, they'll be able to get all of this content. We're going to follow up with folks on some of those resources that were mentioned during the presentation and that folks asked for. And keep an eye out. There will be, again, more opportunities for folks to engage and trainings to engage, and we'll be putting on these trainings as well. So thank you so much for your time. I hope that you are treating yourself well and doing okay in these strange times. And the whole team really appreciates folks joining us this afternoon. So with that, I think we will end. So take care, everyone.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.